So here we are, and we have the body of the clock. You can see I've already started adding a little bit of detail. I added a recess here. It's what's called when it's a hole but not all the way through. It's just sort of a recess in that body. And that's important for giving things kind of a sense of depth. You don't want it to all be flat just on the front. So it doesn't have to be very deep in order to get that to work, but we'll do that again up here. But first we want to create that molding that's on the top of the clock. So do something that sort of looks like that. I'm going to simplify it a bit, but to get started, we're going to bring out a box and shrink it down to be 2 millimeters deep. And then move it up here. And it needs to be a little bit wider than the face of the clock. And let's see, nudge it into position here. We want to leave a roughly square area down here. And let me group all of that for the time being. And then center that ornamental piece on top right there. Okay, you can probably get away with being a lot shorter. So there's this circular cutout here, which means we're going to need a cylinder. And we can shrink that down. And going to kind of eyeball it, see if it looks similar to what we've seen in the picture. Okay, line everything up. As humans, we're very good at seeing things that aren't lined up. So it's important that you line things up when they need to be. When they're supposed to be even on both sides, it's pretty important to make sure you've got everything lined up. Otherwise, it'll look fake. Okay. So I like that. Let's do a hole. Okay, so to add the cutouts in the corner there, I'm going to bring out a couple cylinders and shrink it down till it looks pretty good. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. Now what I need is for the middle of this to be on the edge of that. So let's bring out a ruler. Actually, let's move it over here. That'll be easier. Okay. So this is, I have it set to midpoint, which is actually good. It's what we want. And so to the midpoint of this, it's 23.62 millimeters. Let's make that an even number. It's okay if it's not in alignment. We'll make it in alignment later. So to the midpoint of here is 13. This is 22 millimeters wide, 22 millimeters away. So half of 22 is 11. If I subtract 11 from 22, that's where this edge is. So instead of 13, it should be at 11. And then I'm going to duplicate that, slide it over. That one should be, and I actually accidentally dropped it right in the right place, because it's going to be half of 22 is 11, plus 22 is 33. Okay, let's make these with a shift drag overlap, turn them into holes, and then group them with that. Okay, so far so good. Now we're going to bring out another cylinder. And that's just about right. So let's get those aligned. Okay, we're going to merge these two things, so this one needs to be... I made a mistake there. Let's undo that. Okay, with just that selected, make that 2, and then we're going to move it back 2, and it's otherwise in alignment the way we want it, and so we're going to group those together. Then I can align that with the main clock. And then shift drag that piece up. So it's covering the top. Alrighty, so far so good. Now let's make some more detail here inside of the clock face. Drag out a box. And I'm sure you know how this goes now. We're going to make a recess here. Okay, so after a little bit of this and a little bit of that, we have the body of the clock. Now we just need to fill it in with some details. Now the important part about that is that since this is going to be made on its back, everything needs to be touching the back. This piece, I think, is going to end up, this molding is going to be a separate piece because it's unsupported. If it's laying on its back, there's nothing, this is like hanging out over air. So that might be printed separately. But everything internal can't have parts that are floating over the other. So even though this clock face is actually going to be pretty thin in the real life, you might not go all the way back. In our model, it's going to be a cylinder that goes all the way into the back. So just keep referring back to your reference image to see what it looks like. And I'm simplifying things a little bit. I'm not adding a couple of these details. I'm not adding the doors. But we need it to look like a clock on the inside, so I'm going to do that. Okay, after a little more work, I've got a good start there on the clock inside of the grandfather clock part. Now, looking at the model, we have the pendulum. Grandfather clocks aren't the same without a pendulum. And then these are weights hanging down from chains. If anytime you get a chance to actually look at something up close and so you understand how it's working and what it really looks like, you'll be better off modeling. So do your best with what you have and what you know. I'll leave it to you to go in, and all you have to do now is add the components of the pendulum and the weights, and then change the colors, and you'll have your grandfather clock.